Welcome to Key Conversations, where you get to connect with the best of the music business, unlocking the secrets to exploding your music career, presented by In the Key of Success. I'm your host, Cheryl B. Engelhardt. The conversations you're about to hear are between our special guest and participants of my MX4 course, the Marketing and Branding, Money-Making, Mentorship Mastermind for Musicians. They are singers, songwriters, composers, producers, and artists just like you, asking their burning questions of our experts while transforming their careers over 6 weeks. If you think this could be you, check out mx4course.com to schedule a free half-hour coaching call with me to see if we'd be a good fit. So, let's get started. Welcome back. We're going to pick it up where we left off last week, speaking with Kris Roggeman of Mophonics Music. Let's keep, I think we've got time to do one more round of questions. I've got a couple other from Julian. Let's see. One that I really like that he has here. Do you look for or follow trends in music when creating material and or choosing artists or composers to work with, or even how you write a brief? I would add on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we use it. You guys familiar with Slack at all? The app?
No, Slack?
Yeah, it's it's great for groups and like work groups. So we use it internally, and we have it organizes these threads by like channels. So we have a channel going where we just post, like, add music that we see and like, and kind of like, so that everybody is constantly watching this stuff. Like anytime you see a new, Samsung Galaxy or something, you're like, oh, that track is pretty dope. Like that's probably going to get, asked for again, or like, throw that in there. Also, like every track that is mentioned as a reference to us, we will throw in there as well. And we'll see, like, there was, this Odessa track that got referenced 3 times in a month or something. And I was like, okay, so this is clearly a trend. Yeah. Right. And there are definitely these sort of flavor of the month things that crop up. Of course, you had the Black Keys for years. You had
Coldplay, the piano, da-na-na-na-na.
Yeah, Coldplay clocks. Thank God that's over.
That was like 2007 or something. And Imaging was a big one for a while. We got that everywhere.
You had, Arcade Fire Wake Up was a big one forever too. And then it was like, Lumineers, like the Americana thing, Monsters and Men. Ed Sharp Home is still referenced. I get that every once in a while. So we will throw those up in there as well. And that will not only kind of help inform like what trends are happening, but then, we'll try to like proactively create those tracks to add to our library, because we have about 15,000 tracks in our library. Wow. And so that way we kind of have them armed, and people, one thing that freelance composers do from time to time is they'll send us tracks that they've created, and just say like, hey, would you want to put these in your library non-exclusively, and pitch them? And, if you land something, like, we'll do a deal for it. And if you don't, then great. And if I land it somewhere else, you just take it out of your library. And that's helpful for us too, because then we basically have more things to pitch that are great, and it's non-exclusive. So kind of everybody wins. And that works for us because we're not exclusive, but there are some other companies that if you send them something, they assume ownership of it. Or if you create a demo for them, they assume ownership of it. So you just want to be wary of that. You want to look at your freelance agreements that you're getting from these different companies, and kind of make sure that you're clear on all that stuff, because we don't do that.
Yeah. Which is also awesome. Non-exclusive, just breaking that down really quickly, meaning it can live in your library, but it can also stay in my library. So if I get an opportunity that I could sell that to someone, basically all I need to let you know is, hey, I sold that, but you don't get anything. I'm able to do something. And if you end up selling it, then it's just communication.
Mm-hmm.
That's how non-exclusives work, is that you're kind of working under the assumption that you're not going to both be pitching it to the exact same thing at the exact same time, which is generally why people tend to go exclusive, I think, is what I've heard. But also just to milk it for whatever they can. I don't know.
Yeah. And like we'll reach out before we send something. If it's like, hey, can I send this for Samsung? And if you're like, oh, actually I gave that to Apple or something, okay, then that's not great. Or, then we'll just take it out of the library. And, but it is that communication thing, like you're saying.
Yeah. And composers that are awesome with their Excel sheets and stuff, you keep track of where your tunes are so that you don't have to have that situation. You can actually say, hey, I just pull this from your library. So I encourage proactive composers, but yeah, cool. That's super helpful. It's cool. And I was going to ask you sort of to tag on to that question. What kind of tagging systems do you use when you get tracks from freelancers, or say like I create something for you, it didn't end up winning because there's all this competition, right? The other 6 composers that you have, and then all the other music houses. So there's this piece of music that I wrote that doesn't work for that spot, but it could work for somewhere else. That's what you're saying goes into your non-exclusive library. But exactly. If there's 15,000 tracks, how would you ever find it again? What's the system that you use to make sure that you can find stuff?
We have 2 systems that are, so what Cheryl's saying is like, like let's say we have 6 people writing on a project. And so we get 6 tracks created. We send all 6. 1 gets chosen. What happens to the other 5? We put them in our non-exclusive library. From that point, we have 2 systems. We have an internal facing one and an external facing one. The internal facing one has a lot more data. It has like project information. It has more in-depth metrics about the density and the tone, and like we actually have these like sliders where you can like slide how dark or light something is, or how thick or simple something is.
Cool.
The outward facing is derived from that, but it's a condensed, simpler thing that is really like a 4-year-old can kind of just like click some adjectives and like it spits out the tracks on the bottom there. Like we don't necessarily want outward facing people to see like project information on things. Like I want to say that it was written for Mercedes if they're like BMW, like we don't want to. We don't
for Audi. You don't want to see that it was something written for Mercedes, or even pitched, or even heard, or even in line with their brand.
Or Purina, even, and like, oh no, this was like a dog food.
Right.
And it's like, who cares? It's right for this. Right. So that's and then. But that stuff is helpful for us when we're searching, because we get hit up for library polls all the time, and we'll remember a project where we're like, oh, we got that Odessa reference for that project. Let's look that up. What are all the demos from that project? Because they're all probably going to be in that universe, and that way we can kind of do targeted polls and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, I did that for about a year at another music house. It was just, and as much as you want to try to make it digital so anyone could come in and search, so much of it is tacit knowledge, just remembering the project and what it was associated with, that didn't get into the bajillion different ways you can tag stuff. It's really hard. Even my own iTunes library, I'm just like, so it's impressive. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Caitlin, did you get it? Did you get that question, or you're kind of listening now and just absorbing osmosis style?
I have a question, but it's kind of switching gears. And it has to do with just how you went about building your team to start Mophonics, and whether like practically taking the steps to create it, whether it be starting out or where it is now. How you got everybody on board in that to collaborate and whatnot.
That's a great question. So like, you mean like the composer team?
Yeah, and just the people who were like, yeah, I'm totally for this idea. Like, let's go for it and make it happen and have the space that you do now and whatnot.
Oh, got it. Okay, so we'll give you like a quick digest of the company history. So we started in 2002 in Venice Beach, California, and we were started by writers, actually, the guys who had written for other companies, were kind of wanting to do something on their own, um, and do things that were writer friendly, because especially, it's kind of a murky world, with some of these music houses. I hate to say it. You had, traditionally, it was there was a lot of money to throw around and a lot of money to keep. And, there was some unsavory practices with, divvying up union money, and with, divvying up composer money, and just cheating people and things like that. And so we started with the ethos of like, let's just do away with all that and be a fun, creative place, and the work will come and everybody will be happy. And so that started in 2002 in Venice. And then we slowly grew out there until about 2007, I believe, is when there was a writing duo in New York called The Resource. And it was Adam and Josh, and they were freelancers for Mophonics West. But they brought a new sound, and they also were winning a lot of jobs, and they were winning New York jobs, and kind of had this self-propelled New York business that they were sort of growing for the West Coast. So it just very naturally grew into, hey, do you guys want to be Mophonics New York? To which they say, sure. So they were in, at that time, they were on a space on West 26th Street, which I had been to. And then they found the space that we're in now on East 23rd Street, which immediately was like the strangest. I mean, Cheryl, you've been there. It's like, this very unique and odd and special place that they just couldn't get out of their minds. And like, we need to make this work. Even though
it's so cool. It's like one of my favorite places to go in the city.
It's like, it's got this roof deck. It's got these weird, busts of Dionysus and stuff. And the whole thing is so weird, but it's great. And so that's when, they decided to move over there. And then really, like, we grew the team. Well, then I came on board in 2011, and then we grew our New York composing team shortly thereafter. And yeah, I'm trying to think of like to answer your question more directly. Every time we bring a new composer on, there is a lot of deliberation of kind of like, what are the creative holes that we have, if any, like, and how can we kind of plug those gaps. We're fortunate enough to have like a really robust team where everybody has their strengths. We have Mike in New York, who's like very, multi-instrumentalist, Berkeley grad, like great producer. But you give him 30 seconds and he'll figure out how to play an instrument. He's just he very, very like amazing organic sound. And we have, Steph on the West Coast, who's our head creative and head composer, and can pretty much do anything. He can write, a hilarious song. He can, you can do a remix. He can do kind of, anything. We have Casey out West, who brings like a very strong electronic chops, but also is in a touring band, so has like, amazing skills with that. And then, Roberto is, just a whiz at orchestral. He's got this like amazing Spanish, like understated orchestral thing, but then every time you give him something not orchestral, he also smashes it somehow. So anyway, it's a great, like, diverse group of talent, but I think it is a lot of a lot of brain power kind of goes into like figuring out how and when to grow the team and and looking at the talent and the skill sets and figuring out how it all works together and how it all gels and fits is really crucial.
That's awesome. Nice. Good question. I know we're a little over time. I wanted to see if Scott had like a laser question. We could do like a laser round from Scott. So if you got one.
Okay. Well, I'll shoot for it and we'll see what it is. How does the demo happen with the composer in his studio, or does the composer come to your studio and record?
That's a great question. Either, really. I would say the expectation is that people have their own spaces and their own gear and kind of like handle the recording, the production on their own, and then just like send it to us. But excuse me, we've had people work in our space for specific projects. We have from time to time more or less space available on either coast to do that. And so, yeah, it just depends on the project, but most of the time I would say, people are doing it in their own, set up their own space and then just submitting it electronically to us.
Awesome. That was a perfect laser question. Nice job there, Scott. And I've definitely, just to piggyback on, I would say 90% of the demos I've ever done have been at home, but I have sent my tracks separately so someone at the studio can mix them in a certain way that they want to hear on their system, because that's where they're presenting to clients and they want to balance it a certain way. So I've sort of passed that off. I've come in to do the voice recordings with the client in the room. There are a few exceptions where you'd have to, get into real pants and change out of your pajama pants to go to a studio. But most of the time, yeah, you got to sort of have your own setup, or work with someone that does, that you can, that you have a relationship with, that you can go back and forth with. So.
It's true. A lot of people have studio shares.
Yeah.
Kind of tag team. Yeah.
Yeah. Kris, this was super fantastic. And we covered a lot of bases. Like, this was, to me, even really, really valuable. So first of all, thank you guys that are in the course, the MX4 course, for coming up with awesome questions that give us this awesome conversation. And Kris, thank you for your time and your knowledge and sharing it with us. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. Great questions.
Yeah. And thanks to Mophonics for sharing you with us. And it's cool to get the inside scoop. So we really appreciate that. So everyone go check out all the amazing work that they've done at mophonics.com, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay tuned for next week when we talk to Jamie Kent, the only indie artist who has made it to the top 20 Billboard in country music. He's an inspiration. He's brilliant. You do not want to miss this interview. Please don't forget to rate and comment on iTunes and Stitcher Radio if you like this podcast. It's the best way to keep it going, get more subscribers, and continue to share this awesome information with the indie music community. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. All of the music on this podcast was provided by yours truly. The theme song is called Inevitably, and it was written with Cameron Ernst and produced by Joey Auk. If you're interested to find out more about my own composing and songwriting projects, go to cbemusic.com. If you're a musician looking to really get some results that you're psyched about in your music career, then head to inthekeyofsuccess.com, where I've created a bunch of different kinds of resources just for you. Key Conversations is sponsored in part by Bandzoogle. They make it easy to build a beautiful website for your music. Their step-by-step system gets you online in minutes, and you can choose from hundreds of mobile-friendly themes and customize them with their easy point-and-click editor. All the features you could possibly imagine for a professional website are built in. So, because you are a Key Conversations podcast listener, you get a special 3-month free trial just for you. Go to www.inthekeyofsuccess.com/resources and click on the Bandzoogle logo to access your free extended trial.